about to play some Sonic Mania.
On January the 28th, the day after Gannon's disappearance, LS texts her daughter, Harley, at 6:20 a.m. and instructs her not to open the door to anyone. A minute after that message, LS gets into her car, the Tiguan, and leaves for 10 minutes. Detectives believe she is doing a practice run to see if anybody is watching her, because she's about to move Gannon's body. She returns and backs her Tiguan into the garage. LS moves Gannon's body into her Tiguan and leaves the family home at 8:13 a.m. Drives to Colorado Airport, rents a Kia from the Avis rental company. She sends a text at 8:48 a.m. to Harley, instructing her to pull her car, which is a white Jetta, into the garage. She then uses the rental Kia to pick up Gannon's father, Al, at the airport around 9 a.m. Landon, Gannon's mother, and Al's mother and sister, as well as Landon's brother, all arrive in Colorado to stay with the family as the search goes on for Gannon. LS decides at this point that she doesn't want to stay at the house with all these people. Al and LS meet with detectives at Starbucks for an hour-long interview at 1:30 p.m. They both explain prior events, that Gannon stayed home due to stomach issues, that he was upset about a candle incident, and was asking about bath salts. They describe Gannon as a homebody who is a straight-A student. Al says that Gannon's Nintendo Switch is missing. They give detectives Gannon's phone. Around 3:45 p.m., LS's location becomes unknown for the rest of the day. At approximately 4 p.m., investigators ask for Gannon's toothbrush for DNA purposes. LS sends a series of text messages to Al and Harley about this. Al attends another police interview in the afternoon, but LS does not attend. At 4:41 p.m., LS drives the rental Kia back to the airport, but then drives back out without picking up the Tiguan. Detectives know this because of parking tickets, and they believe she was checking on the suitcase and Gannon's body. A critical point in the investigation occurs when Al is out searching for Gannon. He goes to the French elementary school where LS had supposedly parked her Tiguan. When he sees that her car isn't there, he becomes suspicious and starts to believe she knows more than she's letting on. While LS is playing musical cars, detectives are trying to locate her for another interview. At 6 p.m., LS calls investigators to tell them she couldn't come in because her stomach issues were causing her to constantly use public toilets. Later that evening, LS returned to the airport, parked the rented Kia in short-term parking, keeps the keys and drives off in the Tiguan, according to parking receipts, exiting the airport at 7:03 p.m. She calls Detective Bethel at 7:03 p.m. to express her anger at detectives interrogating Harley. In the meantime, detectives are searching for her Tiguan. Between 8:30 and 10:20 p.m., location data from the Tiguan shows that the vehicle was in the area of Perry Park Road in Douglas County, Colorado. This is when detectives believe LS drove back up to dump the suitcase with Gannon's body in it, as well as a board that had Gannon's blood on it. GPS data shows that LS spent some time at Palmer Lake. Was she considering this as a disposal possibility? This is 4 minutes away from where she dumped the board and Gannon's body, because, well, as the prosecutor said in court, she can't keep them in the car. Harley was not with LS during this time, according to data taken from Harley's phone. At 9:55 p.m., LS calls Harley and tells her to leave the house, meet her at Harley's work, and not tell investigators where she's going. Harley would later testify that she was concerned about Lena, who was only 8 at the time, and would have been left alone had Harley left, so she took Lena with her, which I think goes towards Harley's character. LS just didn't think about or care about anybody else but herself. We must remind ourselves here that Harley is also a victim here. She is most likely going through her own trauma of being brought up by LS, who would backhand her if she didn't comply. A bit of coercive control here. And did I mention manipulation? No? Okay, manipulation. LS texts Harley at 10:23 to tell her they will stay at a hotel that night, which was very close to Harley's work, and to meet her there. At 10:45 p.m., LS texts a statement to investigators. "What do you want from me? Because I have nothing. One of your very own leaked to me what you guys were doing. I did nothing or am being set up. I'm not really even sure other than being told that by another blue with El Paso. I was told I couldn't go home to sleep, and on top of that, men were sent to a home with a minor female and she was forced to stay there. What do you want from me?" Detective Bethel replied, "Come in to talk to me. I would just like information to find Gannon." LS finally arrives at the hotel at 11:30 p.m., roughly an hour later than expected. LS parks her Tiguan in the car park close to Harley's work, and they both drive back to the house in Harley's Jetta to pick up some clothes. They then return to the hotel for the night. The next morning, January 29th, LS retrieves her Tiguan where she left it at Harley's work and drives to the airport to hand in the keys to the rental Kia. Surveillance video captures LS's Tiguan at the car wash at 11:30 a.m. LS finally arrives at El Paso Sheriff's Office for an interview with detectives at midday in a freshly washed car that was still dripping water.
Long time, but just recently I just got my Facebook back because we didn't have for 2 years. So I do have a Facebook, but I've always had Instagram, but it's mostly like a travel YouTube type thing.
Okay, what's Facebook?
It's just my name.
Is it Letecia or Tisha?
It's under Tisha.
I'm sorry, you said it's under Tisha?
Oh, actually it's not. It's because I abbreviated it. It's TT.
Is it your same last name? Stauch.
Yeah, because I don't. It's really. I really don't my first name. I'm always like, oh, Tesha. They're like, what Kesha? So I just put T because people.
Have I been saying your name wrong?
No, you haven't. But I always try to change it. My mom didn't like it, so we tried to change it. So yeah, so I just gave up. Just said put T.
It is here that LS's lies and complex stories start to unravel. None of her stories make sense, no matter how hard you try piecing them together. I know, I've tried. Even LS couldn't string them together. She had to bring her own notes to refer to in the interview.
bookmark something for me.
Is it okay if I take my notes out? Because, like, I wrote down all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I was like, I tried to write down anything he might, like, say, and just in case, because I had, like, notes from different things or whatever. So we already talked about the beginning things, so I figured you're reading that then. So my paper is that we're at the same story that we started with, but then you want me to start with Sunday.
LS claimed she was held at gunpoint, knocked unconscious on her head, sexually assaulted in the basement by an Hispanic male named Eduardo, who then abducted Gannon. She then proceeds to plant seeds regarding the suitcase because she knows this is critical. The attacker allegedly demanded a suitcase and a cardboard box and left with Gannon. You can't make this shit up. Well, apparently you can. LS then cleaned up the area. Detectives offered LS a rape exam, but she declined. But not before detectives managed to seize her phone, which would be key to the investigation. Towards the end of this interrogation, LS stuffs some tissues down her pants, you can see this on the police video, and claims to have chest pain and shortness of breath. She is then transported to the hospital after being told by the paramedics that her vitals are fine and her breathing was fine. Detectives seize her Tiguan. Amanda Van Ness, the nurse who examined her injuries based on what she told the police, that she was raped, that she had banged her head and was unconscious for a short time, found no injuries that corroborated LS's account of the attack. Abrasions and bruises were noted on her hands, superficial injuries, scrapes, and an abrasion on her middle finger, which LS attributed to her dog, saying he had bitten her, and an abrasion on her knuckle, left hand. She found no evidence of psychosis and no evidence of any mental diseases. Meanwhile, detectives have found multiple carpet brushes in the dishwasher at the Stauch residence and also locate an empty gallon of vinegar. Later on in the day, Harley and a co-worker, Janine Sanchez, remember that name, who was the receptionist at Massage Envy, picked up LS at a Taco Bell near the hospital. Harley wanted to stay at Sanchez's house, and LS also ended up staying there, which Sanchez thought was strange. Is this where LS got the inspiration for the name of her killer alter? Because some of her stories are intertwined with sprinkles of truth and real names. With the help of her brother and aunt, LS rents another vehicle, so this is now rental number 2, and the 5th vehicle in the story, a 2020 Nissan Altima, because law enforcement still had her Tiguan, right? Investigators put a GPS tracking device on the Altima. LS drives back to the Stauch home to collect more of her things and loads them into the Altima. LS tells Al the first iteration of her story about being assaulted by the man who took Gannon. Al has his mother and sister leave Gannon's room and collects all of the weapons in the house and locks them in his truck. Gannon's status was upgraded from runaway to endangered missing child due to his age and the medication he needed in combination with the amount of time he had been missing. It was explained during a press conference. There's a number of factors in this particular case. We've been having cold weather, so the weather was an issue. The time frame is another issue. The fact that he's actually under the age of 13, he's 11 years old, and he has specific medicine that he takes. We want to make sure that all the resources are being poured in to locate him. Police said Gannon is 4'9" and weighs 90 pounds, with brown hair and brown eyes. He was wearing a blue fleece hooded sweatshirt, or hoodie, blue jeans and tennis shoes, police said. According to the Denver Post, the searches included dogs and locals looking on horseback. People walked through snow and nearby bodies of water have been checked for any sign of Gannon. The designation of endangered missing child means that the El Paso County Sheriff's Office can now request help from the National Missing and Exploited Team and resources from the FBI Crimes Abduction Division, which includes experts in the field of search and rescue. Massive search efforts get underway in El Paso County, and members of LS's family fly into Colorado to support her. Her mother, Deborah Lowry, her aunt, Brenda Acquard, and her half-brother, Dakota Lowry. Her family stays at the Extended Stay Suites Hotel. Law enforcement began covert surveillance of LS and Harley's activities on January the 30th. As they followed Harley and LS would be seen slouched in the back passenger seat of Harley's car and sometimes appeared to be hiding herself. At 1:24 p.m., law enforcement approached LS in a car park as they were coming out of a store. Detective Sergeant Christopher Ganstein wanted to do a soft contact approach and introduce himself. As he approached LS, she had the car keys in her hand, and he didn't want her to get to the car. He walked up to her. She was surprised. He told her they had a search warrant for the car and their phones. She started walking backwards. She then turned and ran. He ran after her, but she threw the keys across the parking lot. One of the officers took the phone away from Harley before she could manipulate anything. Harley was crying and hysterical, so they had to calm her down. Detectives collect their phones and Harley's car. On Friday, January the 31st, LS gave an interview to a local news station, KKTV, in which he denied causing any harm to Gannon. She said at the time, "I would never, ever, ever hurt this child," she added. "I am going to be ecstatic when I'm able to say to people that they should have a really sincere apology for all of those theories that have come out online, for all the things that people have said I have done or people have done." LS and her family are staying at a hotel. It is around this time, between 4:16 and 5:13 p.m., that detectives believe she returned to Douglas County to retrieve the suitcase with Gannon's body in it. She tells her family she's going out to get dog food and returns 3 hours later at 6 p.m. 3 hours is an awfully long time to get dog food. So now Gannon's body is in the suitcase in the rental van, Ultima. On Saturday, February the 1st, 2020, Dakota helps LS get yet another rental van. So now the third rental and the sixth vehicle in connection with this case. And they switch items from one van to the other. Dakota notices that LS struggles with a very heavy suitcase. When asked if he can help, LS tells him she can handle it. He asks her what is in the suitcase, to which LS replies, "Oh, just softball stuff." LS and Harley begin to drive cross-country down to Florida in the rental van, number 3. Sergeant Rosario Hubble of the El Paso Sheriff's Office believes that Gannon's remains were also in the van at the time. Harley has no clue that her stepbrother is behind her in a suitcase. Back at the house, detectives found blood presence in Gannon's bedroom, the hallway leading to the utility room from the bedroom, the utility room itself, the staircase leading upstairs, pathway to the garage and the garage area itself. They also processed the Tiguan and found traces of blood on the bumper of the vehicle, a rear passenger seat, front passenger seat, and the area near the glove box. The blood was determined to be Gannon's. LS attributes the blood to several accidents that happened inside the family garage, while Al and Gannon did woodworking. She added that Gannon cut his foot in the garage and sat on the bumper while she helped him patch up the wound. However, authorities also found a blanket in the car with drops of blood on it that matched Gannon's DNA. Hubble examined Gannon's room and found a large blood stain that had seeped through the carpet onto the concrete. One CSI blood spatter analyst said that the crime scene in Gannon's room was very dynamic and was not a single event. The scene was a lot more violent than she was expecting to see. 2 pieces of carpet and a rug were taken and examined for DNA, but none of these were connected to the fire incident, so the candle carpet is missing. 3 shotguns were found, but no handguns. Detective Pete Vigil with El Paso Sheriff's Office could smell ammonia bleach in Gannon's bedroom. Al turns his truck, the Frontier, over to investigators. LS texts Detective Bethel from another phone and asks for her passport back. Dakota returns the first van, the Nissan Altima, to the rental company. LS checks into the Candlewood Suites, Pensacola, Florida, at 12:23 a.m. on February the 4th, 2020, just 3 miles from where Gannon's body was later discovered by a group of construction workers. Prosecutors suggested that LS snuck out from the hotel room where she was staying with her daughter to dispose of his body in the middle of the night. She drove out to a small town called Pace and found a very quiet, dark bridge, an ideal place for her final despicable act against Gannon. Escambia Bridge runs over Escambia River that flows into the Gulf of Mexico, which authorities believe was her intended destination for Gannon. On February the 12th, LS calls the evidence department at the El Paso County Sheriff's Office and, acting as Harley, attempts to reclaim what was seized by law enforcement. Because Gannon's disappearance is a pending case, she doesn't get the items back. After Al became suspicious of his wife, he allowed the FBI to listen in on his phone calls with her, trying to draw out more information from her about where Gannon was. In these recorded calls, all of which took place in mid-February 2020, several weeks after Gannon was reported missing, LS and Al argue over LS's alleged version of events, and her story could be heard changing numerous times from phone call to phone call.
Did Gannon have an accident of a serious nature and you freak out and cover it up?
No.
So the answer is no to all of that.
Correct.
Okay. Now this is going to be very uncomfortable for you, even more uncomfortable than what I just asked you. Did Harley kill Gannon?
God, no.
Okay, did she, any of the same questions, did she have anything to do with an accident, a cover-up? Was she involved in this at all with you?
No. I haven't been involved either.
So so something, there's a blank somewhere that you have not filled the blank. So.
How have I not filled the blank?
It's.
So you don't think for a second that someone came in the house and took Gannon? You don't think that
I don't doubt that. I don't know what to believe, but I'm not doubting you. I'm just having to ask all these questions. So,
I begged you. I said, hey, let us all be together. Look at me in my eyes and ask me that question. Feel it in your heart and then ask me that question.
but you gotta look at it from my perspective. Okay, first of all, and I got a couple things to say, so let me get through it.
Al was coached through the calls at the time by the FBI, who helped him come up with questions to ask and topics to discuss with her. Jonathan Grusing, a former FBI special agent who testified in court, stated that one of the goals was to keep Ellis talking as much as possible, because the more she talked, the more information the FBI believed they could get. And boy, could she talk. One of the ways the FBI achieved this, according to Grusing, was by having Al continue to tell Ellis that he believes she didn't kill Gannon, that he believed she is a good mother, or by giving her outs, by having Al ask her if what happened to Gannon was an accident. Someone like LS can't help but give information when making up these stories, Grusing stated. Over the 9 calls, 8 of which were between just LS and Al continues to confront LS, saying that he knows she is lying to him, and LS continues to deny lying, despite changing her story several times over the course of the conversations. In one of the first few calls, played in court, Al accuses LS of lying about Quincy Brown's involvement because law enforcement had confirmed that Brown was in Mexico at the time of Gannon's disappearance. In phone conversations played 2 weeks ago, LS claims Brown, who was a wanted fugitive in El Paso County at the time, was the person who had assaulted her and taken Gannon. Eventually, in the 6th call, LS admits that Brown wasn't involved, but changes her story again to say that Gannon was abducted from her car while she was in the store. In the 9th call, LS begins to claim to Al that Gannon's mother, Landon, was involved and that she believes Landon took Gannon out of the country. She's doing everything she can to point the finger at me. I'm sorry if it sounds selfish, but I hate that bitch, LS said about Landon in an earlier call. FBI Special Agent Amber Cronin testified that she was unable to put a number on exactly how many false stories LS had told about Gannon's disappearance because of just how many there had been during the investigation. In many of the calls, LS gets upset with Al for not supporting her, for not letting her stay with him during the investigation, and for allowing Landon to stay with him while looking for Gannon. Both Grusing and Cronin testified that LS rarely mentioned a desire to find Gannon in any of the recorded phone conversations, and clearly was more concerned about herself and her relationship with Al. Through every phone conversation, LS also continues to claim she is in Colorado, despite having left Colorado for South Carolina weeks earlier, according to numerous pieces of evidence shown throughout the trial. Hours of audio from those calls, along with video recordings of interviews with LS about her mental health, were a prominent part of the evidence offered during the 5-week trial. We hear from one of those calls how Gannon was burned with a candle to the point that his skin bubbled, and according to LS, he peeled the burns off and wiped blood on his bedroom wall. Detectives locate a piece of particle board during their search in Douglas County. It had a stain that appeared to be blood. Blood profile matched Gannon. Investigators believe LS used the board during the disposal of Gannon's remains. LS told Al over the phone that the blood in the corner of Gannon's room was a combination of hers and Gannon's. She said the abductor raped both her and Gannon and was present in the house when El Paso Sheriff's Office came to the house on the night of the 911 call. LS alleges to have attempted to tell detectives at the time that the perpetrator was still in the house. Detectives found nobody else in the house. LS even confided to a friend, Tila Cummings, that she had given Al false stories because she knows he won't believe anything she says, which doesn't make any sense at all. In another call, LS claimed to be 5 weeks pregnant. LS also told an acquaintance that she was thinking about flying out to Colorado to take a lie detector test to prove her innocence. LS had paid for an online fake polygraph, who ended up blocking her because of the questions she wanted them to put on the test. On February 19th, 2020, LS releases the video on Facebook of the candle incident that occurred with Gannon the night before he disappeared. The public now start to question whether the candle incident even occurred. On a call between Al and LS that took place on February 21st, LS introduces the story with the belly full of cash woman. LS issued a statement on February the 12th, 2020, urging Gannon to come home and thanking those who had been searching for him, while also blasting people on social media who suspected her of being involved in her stepson's disappearance. Social media has been devastating, from the harsh comments, speculations, threats, cyberbullying, etc. It has been a challenge when people are trying to run you off the road, waiting outside your hotel, threatening to kill you, etc. I encourage the Sheriff's Office to take down these pages that promote negative behaviour and violence. Let's do what Gannon would do, be kind to one another, she said in the statement. We all have engaged in something crazy online at some point, but Gannon would want everyone to get along and to focus on finding him. I know that many people have kids and are invested in this because it hits close to home for them. I would like to think that overall, most people are genuine and want to do everything in their power to find G. She also released what she said were answers to questions people had about the case. With that being said, please take a step back for a moment and let me explain to you a few details that were not released. For example, just like the video that was leaked, there are additional details that were hidden due to 1. The department doing its job, 2. The effects of social media and how some individuals would criticize or hinder the investigation. I chose to listen. I didn't leak videos or information. But at this time, it's getting later in the process and we just want Gannon home. I feel the need to fill in some gaps. Now let me stress this. Police have known this since the first interview. Saturday night, G was helping me unload in the garage and cut his foot because there are a lot of tools because Albert does woodworking. He sat on the edge of the car and we bandaged it up. He was good to go. He always loves helping his dad in the garage, builds things like his Lego tables and the flower pot they built for me as a gift. After this, I noticed G kept going to the side of the house. He told me he was checking to see if the gate was locked because he was the only one with a gate key. It made him proud to be the man of the house while Albert was away. Fast forward, we did a hike on Sunday, cleared, and shopping on Monday, cleared as well for him getting out of the other side. Please don't think for a second that there isn't enough of technology to determine shadows and movement around the truck. There was also proof from my phone that we had taken a selfie in the truck in our driveway that was time-stamped. We always send pictures to Albert when we're out and about or when he's away. That can be scanned for actual time verification. Last, from day one, the sheriff's office has known a description of the person friend whom Gannon left with. I explained to them and provided evidence. They had information about G having the key to go out the side gate. Last, they have more in-depth details that go along with this, pointing to who sent the person or why he may have come. Again, I repeat, they have had this initially and I was asked to keep quiet about it so they could have the best shot at doing their job and bringing G home. The last thing that they needed was a hindrance to their investigation. I encourage you to think of any suspicious cars that may have been in the area watching a few days prior and keep praying for G. LS was finally arrested on Monday, March the 2nd, just after 8 a.m. in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and held without bond at the J. Reuben Long Detention Center in Horry County, South Carolina. It was here that she was interviewed for 5 hours by FBI agent John Grusing. When asked why she had cut out a piece of the carpet in the house, she said it stunk and nobody could breathe. LS could never directly say when she last saw Gannon. She also claims that the stab marks found on Gannon's body in the autopsy were not stab marks but burn marks. LS was extradited back to Colorado on March the 4th, 2020. On the way, LS breaks loose of her handcuffs and attacks one of her escorts.
She keeps threatening me.
Stop it.
Well, she keeps on threatening me. I have stopped it. She keeps on.
Well, she got out of the restraints.
She keeps on threatening me.
Put your arm down.
I will for you. She keeps
Put your arm down.
Put your arm down.
Well, she keeps threatening me the whole time.
Tisha, give me your arm.
I will to you, but not to her.
Tisha, give me your arm.
I will to you, but not to her.
Cooperate with me.
Now.
Cooperate with me.
I will with you, but not with her.
Cooperate with me.
I will with you, not with her.
Al files for divorce the next day on March the 5th. LS is then formally charged with first-degree murder on March the 11th, 2020, in an El Paso County courtroom. Investigators also found Gannon's blood on LS's shoe and found her DNA on a gun linked to his death. On March 17th, 2020, divine intervention occurred. Gannon's body was discovered in Florida. Bridge inspectors with the Florida Department of Transportation found a suitcase under the Escambia River Bridge while doing construction, and upon opening it, found what appeared to be a boy's body wrapped in blankets. The same blankets on that photo that LS texted to Al on the morning she killed him. LS was counting on the fact that nobody would discover the body and that it would eventually end up in the Gulf of Mexico. These bridges are inspected every 2 years, and LS miscalculated. Had she disposed of Gannon 2 months later, he probably would not have been found. LS did Google bridge maintenance, so she was aware of this factor. Macon Ponder, the bridge inspector, said there was no smell until he opened the suitcase, which lends some credibility to Harley, who says she never smelled or knew the suitcase was in the back of the van as they drove all the way down to Florida. His body, in a fetal position, was decomposed, making identification and cause of death very difficult. But Dr. Susan Ignacio, the associate medical examiner in Largo, Florida, and Dr. Leon Kelly, El Paso County coroner and chief medical examiner, made it possible to compare his DNA. Gannon was wearing the same clothes that he was wearing January 27th, 2020. In the suitcase were also the bedding that were used by LS to wrap Gannon's body around, as well as the pillow LS put into the suitcase. The pillowcase was consistent with a bullet being fired into it. 2 projectiles were also found in the pillow, and 1 projectile was recovered from the bedding. Sergeant Jason Yoder of the Santa Rosa County Sheriff's Office said that Gannon had been shot in the jaw, stabbed in the chest and back, and suffered a skull fracture. Gannon also had numerous defensive wounds covering his arms and legs, and a bullet was lodged in his skull, which was fractured like an eggshell. At a press conference after LS's arrest, Landon told reporters, "Gannon is no longer with us, but I have to say, Gannon is still with us. After the stories from people all over the world, he's not only my hero now, he's the world's hero. I'm astounded by the amount of love that has not come for me, it has come for my boy. And I never thought I'd be standing here. It's a nightmare. I've had to put trust in the people I don't know. Today I got the worst news and the best news. The best news is that justice will be served, and I will make sure that justice is served, because my boy did not deserve any of this that has happened to him." An autopsy was performed the following day, on March the 18th, at Sacred Heart Hospital in Pensacola. Several of Gannon's stab wounds, specifically those on his hands and arms, were consistent with defensive wounds, suggesting that the boy was trying to protect himself from his attacker. Gannon suffered 18 stab wounds, 4 blunt force trauma injuries to the head, and 1 gunshot wound to the head. The stab wounds weren't the primary cause of death. Either the blunt force trauma injuries or the gunshot wound were. Ignacio, who ruled Gannon's death a homicide, also testified that Gannon had hydrocodone. Remember those painkillers that Al was prescribed and were stored in his bedside cabinet? Well, those and acetaminophen were found in his system. Hydrocodone is an opioid-based prescription pain reliever. Ignacio said it was unusual for an 11-year-old child to have that drug in their system. Because the body was decomposed, Ignacio had to break the femur bone in the hip in order to obtain bone marrow for the DNA comparison. Doctors also believe that Gannon's body was more preserved than it should have been, considering the length of time he was left in the suitcase, and they attribute this to the snow in Douglas County. When Gannon's body was there, they believe he may have been frozen, thus delaying decomposition. In June, LS attempted to escape from jail. She had allegedly, according to a probable cause affidavit, devised a plan to break through the window of her cell using a broom handle. LS believed she could get through the window because she had already measured herself. LS was charged with 1 count of solicitation to commit escape. She was writing letters to a fellow inmate with plans to escape and offering money to that inmate for their help. Gannon was laid to rest on September the 27th, 2020, in Loris, South Carolina. A young boy lost too soon was laid to rest over the weekend. Though his grieving loved ones continued to grapple with the heinous crime that resulted in his death, the focus was on Gannon, celebrating the life he led and the people he touched in his too brief 11 years. I was chosen to be the mum of an angel, Albert. You were chosen to be the father of an angel. Lena, you were chosen to be a sister of an angel. Mother Landon, Father Albert, and Sister Lena had their final moments with the boy they affectionately called Bubba. About 10 o'clock this morning, I've buried my sweet son in a cemetery in Charleston, Al said. He has a smile that just brightens up the room, and that happened at the time he was able to smile. He just had a grace, an unbelieving spirit about him. I guess I can explain it as just an old man. He would just sit and have a heart of gold and do anything for anyone. Hold your children close and love them, because when it's over and you can't get them back. Gannon is not only my hero, he's your hero, and it means the world to me. I just want to say thank you to everyone that is here, from all the pouring love from everywhere. He is the greatest person in the whole wide world, his sister added. Although LS made up so many stories to avoid prosecution, once she was arrested, she then started to lay down the groundwork for a plea of insanity. Her story then changed to one of her alters, Maria Sanchez, being the killer, which she described in an interview with worldwide renowned DID specialist Dr. Dorothy Lewis, who testified on LS's behalf. But even then, she denied ever stabbing Gannon. She claimed that was a lie on law enforcement's side. She pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. The defense argued that she killed Gannon during a psychotic break caused by trauma from being physically, emotionally, and sexually abused during her childhood. Experts at the state mental hospital concluded that LS had a personality disorder with borderline and narcissistic features, but was sane at the time Gannon was killed. Under Colorado law, that means understanding the difference between right and wrong and being able to form the intent to commit a crime.